Me now is Ambassador Akbar Ahmed, who has held a number of senior positions in Pakistan, including ambassador to the United Kingdom and Ireland. He's currently a professor of Islamic Studies at American University and joins us here in Washington. Ambassador, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Anand.
How would you characterize the relationship right now between the United States and Pakistan?
I would say, Anand, it was a successful trip. Successful for several reasons. You need to put it in the context of a very difficult relationship between Pakistan and the United States over the last decade. I would say since 9/11, there have been some really bad patches. The Abbottabad, the killing of Osama bin Laden, the Salalah incident when so many soldiers on the borders were killed by American gunfire, and so on. The Raymond Davis affair, who was picked up in Lahore and involved in some shooting incident in the city. So from those very difficult times to a time when the Prime Minister of Pakistan is not only welcomed with all the symbolism, he calls on the Pentagon, he's a guest of the Defense Secretary, calls on the Secretary of State, meets the Vice President, and then spends a long time with President Obama. It was a long meeting. And all the gestures, the symbols are there. He apparently presented President Obama with the photographic album of photographs of President Obama's mother when she was in Pakistan as a worker there, an aid worker. She's an anthropologist, and Obama has happy memories of that time. So that was the symbolism. And then the substance was Pakistan arriving in Washington with very clear ideas about not allowing America to bully it in terms of its nuclear program. And that's a non-negotiable as far as Pakistan is concerned for its own reasons. And the Americans hoping to get some leeway there. And in the end, they just put it aside, so they left it as it was. The most important thing was that both Pakistan and the United States keen to get this relationship back on track, to normalize it as much as possible, to have some broad idea that the joint enemy really is terrorism. And both would be committed to fighting terrorism. And of course, that opens up a host of questions. Terrorism within Pakistan, the TTP and so on, terrorism in Afghanistan across the border, and you're seeing a very reactivated Taliban, and of course, terrorism on the other side of the border involving India and Kashmir and so on. So a very difficult set of relationships around the concept of terrorism. And if the United States and Pakistan have a very broad, and again, these are very broad and sometimes very hazy ideas. If there's a broad agreement, that's a big, big sign. And then, of course, adding to the symbolism, Mrs. Sharif and Prime Minister Sharif's daughter called on Michelle Obama, the First Lady, who doubled the grant for women's education in Pakistan. Again, high symbolism, again, gestures to show that the United States is on course to reclaiming Pakistan as a friend and as an ally.
Right, just to be clear on the nuclear issue, there was a statement issued by the Federation of American Scientists earlier this week. It's an organization that monitors the proliferation of nuclear weapons around the world, in which it said that Pakistan had expanded its nuclear arsenal up to 130 nuclear warheads right now. The US position is that Pakistan should not deploy those weapons. So you're saying that this is off the table. Pakistan said we're not discussing it.
You know, Anand, there was a big debate taking place in Pakistan before the Prime Minister came, and I was following it sitting here in Washington. Pakistan's psychology is tied up with the nuclear program, with its own vision of India. And Pakistan sees India, at least certain sections of Pakistan. There's a very large section which also wants very good relations and cordial relations, as sooner rather than later. But there's a large section that feels very threatened and vulnerable with India, much larger neighbor, fully armed, also nuclear, also seeming to be threatening. And you've also had some very irresponsible statements by senior Indian officials actually suggesting limited nuclear strikes of all kinds. So with that atmosphere, I don't think any politician, any leader in Pakistan would be able to stand up and say, okay, let's draw down the nuclear program. Let us now be in line with the rest of the world community. So that was, as far as I could see, in terms of the debate in Pakistan, just off the table.
Okay.
No Pakistani would say, go to Washington and sell away or compromise on your nuclear program.
Right. That, of course, raises the question of what Nawaz Sharif brought to the table insofar as regional stability is concerned. Because that's another thing that the US is looking for, regional stability. So what would he offer the US on that?
Well, it's a question of what the US can offer for Pakistan, because you see, and again, you've got to see this meeting And this discussion, and again, I'm watching this over time. Nawaz Sharif came here 2 years ago. It wasn't a very particularly successful meeting. It was a routine meeting. There is a difference because the Chinese have now proposed the China-Pakistan economic corridor with the $50 billion committed, or $46 billion, in that range. That has huge implications, economic and political, for the whole region, not just for Pakistan. So the interests of China, Pakistan involve that whole region, involving Afghanistan, Iran, and into Central Asia, and hopefully India. Now this means that suddenly Pakistan, which has been seen more as a nurturer and as a nursery and as a really breeding ground for terrorism by a lot of the world media, is suddenly going to become potentially a very important nation in that critical part of the world. And for the United States, I think the realization is coming that a potential ally, which has been having this off and on relationship for decades, but potentially an ally, it's suddenly in danger of being lost to the Chinese and the Russians, who are forming this China-Russia alliance for this particular project.
But the Chinese relationship is economic in many respects. I mean, that happened last April when President Xi Jinping was in China, and contracts were signed, as you pointed out, $46 billion. They were mainly energy and infrastructure projects at that time. There was some cooperation agreement signed on countering terrorism at that time as well. So that's been in place since April.
Yes, yes. No, my point is slightly different. My point is that because President Xi has put such emphasis on this program, the Silk Route and the Belt and so on around, and it's not just Pakistan, so it really is Asian, because he's put so much emphasis, and in this scheme of things, Pakistan is such a critical key player. Pakistan's importance is underlined, and suddenly from just an average Asian country, it becomes an important country. That is where the United States, looking at the map of Asia, realizing how things are changing. The Russians have been to Pakistan for the first time in many, many years, and all sorts of agreements have been signed. The Chinese are involved, and it's not just economics. Remember, if you have a highway route from China up to Gwadar, there's going to be all kinds of economic developments and political developments, as people are going to be involved in economic relations and cultural relations between China and Pakistan. So I think it is important for America also to realize that they do not want to end up losing a potential ally with 200 million people and nuclear.
Here's a question that's come up again and again, and we've seen it more recently in the media in the last few weeks. Our reporter raised it earlier on as well, and that is, who really wields power in Afghanistan? Is it the civilian elected leadership, or is it the military?
Are you talking about Pakistan or Afghanistan?
Pakistan.
Pakistan. Well, Anand, this is a fascinating relationship, and I always look at it this way. When there's a strong, capable civilian government elected, then there's no question who's wielding power. The moment there's a perception that political government, elected government, is weak or corrupt or not very efficient, you immediately have the army pushing in, and automatically it's a very close symbiotic relationship, and it doesn't work longer than the military commanders simply sending in Brigade 111, which is posted in Rawalpindi, marching into the Prime Minister's office and saying, "Sir, accompany me, it's over." It's that intimate. And right now, there's a very interesting balance. I think that the Prime Minister is very much in position now. He's survived the crisis over the last year, where Imran Khan had brought out the processions, and there were demands that Nawaz Sharif go. And there was a belief that perhaps the army was supporting him. Now it's clear that Nawaz Sharif has survived that crisis, and that he's working in tandem with General Sharif, the head of the army. So for the time being, there's some kind of balance between the two, and they're working together. In terms of security, in terms of the nuclear program, in terms of these military operations in the tribal areas, there's no question that it is the army that's very much in the saddle, because they are de facto in command and they're de facto in position.
On the question of Kashmir, and I've only got a minute for this, Pakistan has asked the United States for help. Should the US get involved?
Well, you know, Anand, I just pray and hope that sooner rather than later, the people of Kashmir have some resolution, and therefore India and Pakistan are able to live together with prosperity as good neighbors, as friends, and hopefully have some harmony in this subcontinent. It's been over half a century, and we still haven't moved beyond this business of, does Kashmir belong to me or does it belong to you? So I really would want at some stage for wisdom, both in India and Pakistan among the leaders, compassion and foresight for them to come together and resolve the problem one way or the other, which is not, why aren't we able to resolve